contributions that shape our communities, bring people together, and elevate the human condition. With me this evening is Michael Trapanovsky, AIA, this year's Director of Practice and Design. Michael and his team have been working on making this year's event even better, having started their efforts the week after last year's Design Awards. Michael, I am very excited to see what the Design Awards Committee and the members of AIA Rochester have to share with us tonight.
Thank you, Andy, for the introduction. As everyone can see, yes, we are again virtual for this year's AIA Rochester Design Awards. Although we had hoped to be in person this year, we are grateful to have everyone with us virtually tonight to celebrate together. First, I would like to take the opportunity to thank all the local and regional architects for submitting all the wonderful projects this year. We appreciate your dedication to the communities in which these projects are found in and the continued support for the AIA Rochester Design Awards. I would also like to thank all of this year's sponsors. Without you and your commitment to the AIA Rochester chapter and the Design Awards, none of this would be possible, and we are grateful to have you be part of this year's Design Awards. Lastly, as all of us have navigated our way through the pandemic over the last year, I have kept one motto close to me throughout these times: keep calm and design on. And I am pleased to see, with all the exceptional projects that were submitted this year, that all of you have done the same.
Thank you, Michael. Welcome everyone again to the 2021 AIA Rochester Design Awards.
The Architectural Foundation of the Greater Rochester area takes special pride in sponsoring tonight's award event. And we are particularly pleased that the AIA has chosen to highlight the work of all those who have submitted designs. In each year, the AFGR awards scholarships to aspiring Rochester design students. And in 2020, that number climbed to $17,000. Please consider donating to the AFGR and help us continue to educate and inspire the regional design community.
Vargas Associates is proud to sponsor this year's AIA Design Awards. We support many area architects with interior design, FF&E procurement, and move management. With every project, we strive to blend aesthetic with function, schedule, and budget. Congratulations to this year's nominees. Your creativity is outstanding.
ME Engineering is a proud supporter of the AIA Rochester chapter in the 2021 AIA Rochester Design Awards. Congratulations to all the winners.
A total of 31 projects were submitted for this year's AIA Rochester Design Awards for consideration by the jury. Although a select few projects would win awards this year, every project has cemented its place in our communities, and that in its own is a great achievement. Thank you again to everyone that submitted to this year's AIA Rochester Design Awards and your continued support. Now, on to the awards presentation.
Transplant, barn. Jen and Phil dreamed of a house to serve as a generational gathering place for their family. They envisioned a new atmosphere that reflected their unique personalities and was rich with history. Jen's strong sense of simple design and Phil's New York State roots led them to a structure that once served as a hay barn in a rural area near Schenectady, New York. They decided that the dismantled frame of this old barn, an early 19th century heavy timber structure, was destined for resurrection 500 miles away on a wooded lot in Hudson, Ohio. Its skeletal frame would be transplanted and their house would be built around it. With such a clear vision outlined by the clients, the architect's role was to carefully navigate the design process and surgically graft this frame into its new environment. The primary goals expressed by the client were to reassemble the frame as close as possible to its original form, clearly express and celebrate the heavy timber members, and create the soaring volumetric feeling of a barn. Obviously, there were very specific programmatic requirements, and much effort was spent to ensure functionality while maintaining the purity of Phil and Jen's overarching design criteria. The design solution started with a siting of the structure. Influenced by traditional bank barns, the ground floor was set below grade and constructed of masonry, rooting its foundation into the earth. This move proved visually screening from the street, creating a stealth garage entrance on the west and establishing a private exterior patio and yard extended to the east. Lowering the structure also helped to scale down the massing of the three-level house. The east-west orientation allows eastern sun to permeate the great room in the morning and places the main entrance on the south elevation to formally address the street. As one approaches, the simplicity of the gable form is expressed, while the heavy timber skeleton is subtly revealed. Intentionally, the framing members run behind the large windows, so they can be experienced from the exterior. At the recessed entry alcove, an exposed beam runs directly above head, suggesting a final hint to visitors of its internal structure. The entrance leads into a foyer where you can pause, take in the scale of the atrium, and appreciate the hemlock barn framing. Set inboard from the building's shell, constructed of structural insulated panels painted white, the frame is introduced in contrast. Emulating the experience of entering a barn, the simple and unassuming exterior gives way to an expansive, almost chapel-like interior volume. The straightforward plan is arranged with the primary circulation centrally oriented, flanked by a private rooms to the west and common spaces to the east. This allows visibility and connection via the 35-foot high atrium as one moves horizontally through open foyers and vertically on the ornamental stair. Between the second and third levels, an informal office loft projects out over the main fireplace hearth. The ground level great room includes the kitchen, dining, and living areas, flowing out to a covered patio and the yard through full-width bifolding doors. Like any unique construction project, especially one that involves transplanting a historic barn frame into a new context, the project was logistically challenging. However, this residence is now poised for longevity in a new environment, a new century, as a family gathering hub for years to come.
How'd you guys come across the barn in Schenectady?
This particular company that they dismantle, they farm out barn structures, and they dismantle them carefully, and then they resell them and re-erect them.
Okay.
There were a few that were available, but Phil and Jen had told me that this particular company charges a per square foot.
Okay.
So footprint. And when I looked at this barn and saw that it was actually 30 foot plus tall, I'm like, wow, we could take this square footage and we could go vertical with it. It'd be more economical. And then when we saw that it was Schenectady, New York, and we saw some of the history of it, that kind of was what I was attracted to.
Yeah.
Jen was adamant that we wanted to keep this frame as close as possible to its original form and recreate that. So that became, instead of kind of making the frame work for the plant, their architecture, we almost had to make the architecture work around the frame as the initial generator of the project, which was kind of exciting but kind of challenging at the same time.
Well, so that's really interesting.
Those were our two
two requirements: keep it as is and keep as many of the beams that we can as is. We knew some were rotted and he had to replace some, and there's some little movement because of the, to make it a home instead of a barn. But those are kind of our two requirements. Leave it as is and then keep as much of the original, beams as we could.
Well, and kind of talking about the plan of it and kind of looking at how everything laid out and hearing you say that now, I have a hard time believing that it worked out as nicely, because the way the entrance kind of works to that space, and as you kind of walk in, you kind of walk towards that volume,
Yeah.
and kind of get an understanding of it. It's kind of amazing to me that structure kind of allowed that to take place without substantial modification to it.
The windows follow the framing, but in some cases we said, you know what, let's put the windows where we want them to be, and let's let the barn frame run behind it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of another inspiration that normally that's a no-no. Why you don't want the barn framing to run behind the windows. But then we thought about how great is that, because this project's all about the barn frame.
Right.
You can see them outside, and as you approach the house, especially in the evening, where the house glows from the inside, but you can see the beams. I mean, it's an amazing experience, really. And when Chris said, people will pause here when they come in, and it's going to take them a minute. And it's not lost on me that is truly what happens when someone comes into the house for the first time. That's exactly, they have to stop. They don't hear what you're saying. They just have to stop and look around, and it takes them a few minutes to absorb all that. And so what he said is exactly what happens. It's really, every time for me, it's still surprising.
Hi, my name is Tim Lai with Tim Lai Architect. What I like about the transplant barn is that it is an elegant and reframed design that respects the timber frame structure. The interior organization is really inventive and dynamic, that allows different views and experience on all the levels, both internally and towards the outside, the landscape outside through the windows. The triple height atriums is very generous and grand, from the ground floor all the way to the roof, and yet it is balanced by the plain white walls and ceiling that is infilling the rustic post and beam timber frame structure. So I really like it.
The second project is the transplant barn, which we put in an interior category and gave it a citation. But it's a nice project. In fact, I disagreed with the majority of the jury, who really enjoyed the interior. I prefer the simplicity of the exterior, and the way that the garage is sunk and the terrace is sunk helps to simplify the exterior look of the building. So I appreciate that. The interior is a bit of a surprise because it's so busy. The old barn frame is fabulous, and the way it works with the windows, and you can see it from inside and outside, is nice.
Hi, I'm Monica Wengler, and was on the jury for your submissions this year. I really enjoyed the transplant barn project. It was amazing to see how the reused timber frame was brought to the site, and the various systems that were employed to celebrate that natural wood and be able to see that frame celebrated on the interior. The openness of the 3-story atrium and all the natural light that came in was really created a nice space in there. And I appreciated the neutral setting that was celebrating that aged structure and all that we can get, all that we can value from reusing things like that. So.
Shelter in place. An unbroken roof reaches out long and barn-like, a finger pointing. Our rural practice, situated where cows outnumber people, embraces an agricultural ethic. We aim to master 3 lessons from farmers. Siting. Like the modern barn, place-based structures belong because they serve and are in equilibrium with the land that nourishes them. Scale. A modern barn is sublime, and its scale is in measure with the working landscape it inhabits. Economy. Ingenuity underscores a lack of pretension. Simple forms suited for climate and purpose. Here on fallow Finger Lakes fields, our clients aim to create a dwelling that fits. This house is not a barn. However, it will be surrounded by a cultivated landscape that is squarely within the cultural, geographic, and historic context of barns. Heeding the above lessons, the design begins with a linear, roofed form sited to minimize disruption of the field. This line in the landscape accomplishes several things. At its east end, it greets visitors. Pulling away the garage permits a roofed Zen entry garden between, plus shaded outdoor living spaces that frame the landscape. Along its south facade, its transparency and length permits communion with the dark forest across the pond. Its west end culminates 1 story above the sloping terrain with indoor-outdoor living space aiming at the view. All the above could result in a house that looks much like a freestall barn, but for several small changes. Passive solar principles compel us to pivot the south wall 15 degrees east, while the western facade is pulled deeply behind the roof and seasonal shade sails to protect against summer afternoon low rays. The pivot also slims down the house at its entry, shedding unnecessary square footage. The result? All shared living spaces occupy a multiple level room that grows in width and height as one proceeds along that line in the landscape. In the end, the single roof, inspired by farm buildings and chiseled, angled, and stretched by function, amplifies and refines its role as shelter in the rural place.
To me, the name needs to, in just a few words, it frames the way you're going to look at the whole project.
Yeah.
For the most part, the words have an opportunity, if you pick them right, to try to distill down at least one essence or a couple of the ideas. And then you try to do something memorable. In this case, I tried to do something a little provocative.
Right.
I mean, there was a lot of debate in the office about it.
Okay.
People had very different ideas and thought this was a terrible, terrible name.
Really?
Yeah, because it is negative connotation. The shelter in place is kind of to some people, like they immediately, it just triggers this idea of lockdowns and mass shootings, and
that's so
terrible, terrible word. So, and it is, and I kind of chose it with this very specific goal of, I want to reclaim those words. Those are the two of the most important words in architecture: shelter and place. If we take this idea of the line in the landscape, which is all this really is, it's essentially a barn roof that's then been cut in half, and then the front wall's been pivoted 15 degrees south in order to ideally collect the solar rays and avoid the worst of the western rays on that main passive solar wall. So if you start with that concept, that essentially is the form of the house, and it gives rise to the volume. The rising width and height of the main living space is just kind of the geometric result of those two variables. Like it just happened that way. And so then you puzzle out, okay, well then how do we respond to that?
Yeah.
And the only other thing that's left to do is to say, well, you have south and you have north. South is for shared living, north is for the most private, functional. You have served spaces on the south and you have servant spaces on the north. You have a single separator between them. And those are really all of the variables that were needed for the floor plan to drop into place.
Hearing you talk about it, it's such a simplistic But yet, I mean, it seems so simplistic, but at the same time, it's that data taken and having it still function and still feel familiar. That I think was the thing that was engaging, one of the things that was really engaging to me. Because, like I said, I didn't ever at any point feel that, like, so going back, okay, so I look at it and I'm like, this is really interesting, right? The form is interesting. I'm expecting in my head that the form and the plan are gonna go hand in hand. And they do, but in a different way that I was thinking. And I think that's one of the things that I'm walking away from it and saying, wow, to me, I understand this floor plan.
The third project that I'd like to talk about is the so-called shelter in place. It's an unbuilt house project, which we gave a citation to. And I actually think that that's one of the best design projects that we looked at. My only hesitation about it is that it's unbuilt. And for me, unbuilt projects would be more theoretical. And so I'm hoping that this project will come back as a built house someday and in fact get another design award. But I think there was a lot to recommend it in terms of the separation of the garage from the house, the pass through, the exposure, the end exposure, et cetera. I think all contributed to the quality of the design.
Another project I'd like to call out is the shelter in place. We really appreciated this modern take on the historical red barn. It's quite Usonian in nature with the large cantilevered overhangs and transom windows. The pinch point at the entry provides for a surprising volume as you move through the space, which is quite nice. And we really look forward to seeing the final product on this one. I enjoyed serving on your jury, and I want to thank you for this opportunity.
The shelter in place project. This was beautifully presented, in my opinion. The graphics and the communication and the diagrams really help to tell the story of what the intention is for that project. I am excited to see it become a built project, but it is bringing lots of excitement and shows lots of opportunity in the unbuilt category.
Eastman Museum. The project consisted of creating a visitor orientation center for a historically significant house museum. Prior to the project, the facility had incrementally evolved over many decades, leaving a circuitous and inefficient circulation system, multiple floor levels, and the main entrance distant from the visitor parking. Site topographic conditions were equally challenging, with a gently sloping property with stairs facing visitors at all entrance points. Our overall given program goal was to centralize circulation at one point adjacent to parking, serving staff and visitors with admissions and visitor amenities, including an enhanced cafe and gift shop. Another objective was connecting of the two main theater spaces, with this new lobby creating a focused hub of all museum activities. The design for the new visitor center was conceived of a lighted vitrine atrium, carefully preserving the historic fabric of the original residence, situated midway between the house and the museum. The atrium accomplished several technical and program goals, not only weaving numerous site and floor level changes into an imperceptibly sloping continuous floor level, but also creating a visually distinct, iconic entrance point for all museum activities. Housing the main admission desk, security and reception desk, this space allows for immediate access to the existing theater, the new concourse, bookstore, and cafe, orienting visitors to the museum and tours of the house. A significant site feature of the new facility is the colorama, a framework for the display of large-scale images originally created as transparencies for Grand Central Terminal in New York. This feature creates an interesting frame for the newly landscaped courtyard drop-off area with the added benefit of screening the existing cooling towers.
They had inherited these transparencies from Kodak that used to be in Grand Central Station, the main terminal. Mm-hmm. And you'd come off the trains and there was this gigantic 16 feet by 60 feet long images. That became the advertising for the museum. You know, that's what this museum's about, is photography. And so now when you pull in the parking lot, that helps to say
it's a presence.
You're here.
Yeah. You do see it from east, and you see it on the arrival, but it also forms this kind of landscaped courtyard, paved with different paving materials. And as you arrive into the pavilion, it feels like a seamless space.
It was an orientation point versus, in my head, I'm like, well, this is the entry to the building, and I was but when you look at it and you have that, and I, kind of focused in on the word orientation of it, and I was like, God, that couldn't have been more specific on what had taken place. Exactly. The architecture obviously helps drive that, but almost that verbiage basically helped create the whole environment and the plan that went around it.
And the important piece was, connecting that to the Dryden, which is across the museum. Before you had to snake through these tiny little corridors and back corridors to get there. And now there's this flow between those two theaters that's important. So all of a sudden, all these connections at this hub are starting to work.
The owner, Bruce, and everybody, they knew what they wanted. And they said, do it.
Well, you've gotten everyone engaged, and they're all part of the process at that point. And it's like, what makes a project better than when you have a client that's so engaged in their project that they no longer feel directly like a client, but they're part of the design team.
Yep.
They are.
And it's like, they're part of the vision. Mm-hmm. You're no longer showing them stuff.
Right.
They're engaging with it. They're touching it. They're like, I can see it. They're holding it up on the wall, and they're like, I love this. Right. I love the way you show them a perspective view, a 3D model or something like that, and they're looking at it and they're like, yeah, I see. Maybe we make this a little wider. Maybe we, and they're engaged at that level of the design.
We almost shot ourselves in the foot with his renderings. He would do these very quick perspective things. And Bruce, he would look at those and he'd say, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't look exactly like this, and this is what I want.
I know. That's always the danger with the renderings.
Wait a minute, this doesn't look exact.
He'd say, Bruce, this was a quick shot, and okay, we get it. All right, we'll move. We'll move.
I'll tell you what, we'll change the rendering.
Well, I'll update all the renderings to match what gets built, if that makes you comfortable.
Fifth project that I'd like to talk about is the Thomas Vischer Visitor Center at the George Eastman Museum. I applaud the simplicity or the simpleness of the glass connector between the theaters. But I thought that the corridor or the passageway next to the bookstore and next to the cafeteria, that glass wall, the undulating glass wall, I thought was well done and helps to expand that space and make it much more livable and inviting.
And then the second project I'd like to talk about is the Thomas Vischer Visitor Center, the George Eastman Museum. And I like that the glass entrance and the trim colors do not dominate the facade, but subtly blend into the adjacent historic buildings. And also like that the design team used photosensitive glass to overcome the energy penalty for the west-facing glass front.
And then with the George Eastman Museum, this project is really beautiful. The photography is quite good, and I enjoyed the way that the exterior space has been activated. It's respectful of all the other activities going on in the area, and looks like it could create a lot of different opportunities for just wonderful ways to bring the community in and use that space outdoors. And then the connector between is really respectful of the two buildings on either side. And in plan, it's clear how it's kind of cleaned up a kind of convoluted circulation path and made it much more straightforward and simple. And it's just nicely executed.
Casa Sedada. Located in the agrarian countryside south of Rochester, New York, the former Mendon Pony Club, with its remaining 1930s vintage horse barn and equipment shed, sat idle and horseless for decades. The new owners envisioned a farmette with an immersive visual connection to the surrounding pastures, their horses, and with nature. Because the horse barn was laid out to accommodate equine stalls, hay storage, and a tack room, it was decided to adapt the adjacent equipment shed into a residence. The 5-bay structure with sliding barn doors and dirt floor had been used to park tractors and store farm equipment. It was built into the side of a hill that sloped south to former pastures and on to woods. The design strategy was to lift the barn doors up to create a strategic canopy to cover a new patio and offer the opportunity for a 65-foot-long south-facing window wall. The canopy was conceived based upon passive solar principles. Its configuration lets sunlight permeate the residence in the winter, shades it in the summer, provides rain and snow cover, and allows western breezes to pass through. The original barn door windows remain in place, were covered with transparent corrugated roofing, and transformed into skylights. The floor plan is open, with all primary functions on one level. A new concrete floor slab with integral radiant heat was poured. The roof structure was painted white, and due to its height, afforded a loft space on each end. Shed dormers were added for additional head clearance to bring in light and to provide views. The center space was left open to experience the volume and to accommodate a great room. A simple concrete block mass serves to divide the space and provide the hearth for a wood-burning fireplace. A central bifold bay of windows enhances circulation flow and reinforces the connection of inside and out. Upgrades to the site include new pasture fencing, new utilities and gravel drives, and an array of solar panels that were installed on the south face of the horse barn roof, enabling energy conservation. An important selling point to the local municipality was how the project stealthily fit a new residence into underutilized existing farm structures. From the road on the north side, the property remains virtually the same and continues to contribute to the area's bucolic past. Saudade, a Portuguese term to describe the bittersweet feeling of nostalgia, was the theme of this project and pays homage to the owner's animal-loving fathers. The result is a place that allows for animals and humans to seamlessly commune.
It was an equipment barn, and it was full of tractors and dirt floors and
Dead
somebody's
possums.
treadmill,
Yep.
dead raccoons,
Oh,
yeah,
raccoons,
yeah,
yeah.
no possums, yeah. And I'm like, and then the horse barn itself was the former Mendon Pony Club,
Yep.
and it was this beautiful interior, these beautiful stalls, and a gorgeous tack room, and it was, in my mind, it was like the perfection of a horse barn versus, potential house barn. So, and Chris fell in love with it. I think that day you saw the vision.
Yeah, the way
I could be wrong.
Yeah. Well, what I could see is you know how this I could envision the way that the buildings were set and how they related to each other, and they enclosed this small kind of green area.
Mm-hmm.
And they're offset, and then the way that the topography kind of graded down to the pastures and then down to the woods,
Yep.
all south facing. didn't really come up with it quite. We'll talk about that, the whole design of it, but just the way the buildings were sited, the existing buildings were sited, and how, again, bank building, that building was kind of built into the hill, was like, wow, this is, from a site plan standpoint, it was really, really like,
it engaged you like almost right away. You set foot on it.
Yeah, so
like,
she knew what she was doing after Wegmans. You know, I was just getting groceries. I didn't know we were
buying property.
No.
And moving.
Yeah. So good move.
Thank you.
So a lot of people ask us, oh, why didn't you put your home in the horse barn?
Bigger barn.
The big barn.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, and have the horses in the small barn. And we're like, well, this was set up as a horse barn. It was perfect.
Yeah.
And what was really cool about this shed, equipment shed for lack of better terms, is that it was so finite. It's about 1,500 square foot, and we're going to make our project work in this confines. We're not going beyond this.
Yeah.
And that was a really great challenge to do, and it really, and we can get into the design process, which lasted about 15 minutes over a PBR and a bourbon, and we designed it.
Just to be clear, I was bourbon, he was PBR. I don't drink PBR.
I kind of figured.
She's more refined. But yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if I'm answering your question, but the idea was not to build new, not to demolish, but to kind of keep those intact.
I enjoy doing the process, but at the same time, I'm my own worst client.
Yeah.
Because it's like, where do you draw the line?
I think, Michael, if it had been an empty lot, it would have been much more difficult. But the fact that there was a history there, the structures were there, and we were simply adapting them to have the horse barn and the people barn that we call, the adaptation part of it helped in that regard, of that kind of stage fright of making a run. We were just kind of adapting it. So I think it would have been much more difficult if we just had a blank slate.
Constraints really helped us to keep it simple.
Yeah.
And we had made a commitment to keep it in that footprint and not do an addition onto the house.
Yeah.
So it was pretty easy to keep it minimalist and keep it simple, keep it within budget.
Yeah.
I mean, from that perspective, it was pretty seamless.
For the Casa Sardine, what I like about the project is that it appropriate the old barn structure in their new home and naturally fit into the horse farm setting. The canopy is a really nice feature that playfully flip up the old barn door and become a cover for the patio, which I like. And the skylight also help to bring in the natural light. And on the inside, I also really like the painted white wall and the structure that is simple and elegant, while letting the texture to show through from the old structure. So that's what I like about it.
Good evening. I'm Robert Libsey. I'm the Director and Professor Emeritus at the Knowlton School of Architecture at Ohio State and Jury Chair. And we very much enjoyed looking at your projects. And we're going to just make some comments about some of the winners. So the first one is the Casa Saudade or Saudade. I'm not sure quite how to pronounce that. So that's a really nice conversion of the tool shed. A great use of the building, etc. I like the simplicity. I like the sort of the volume of the middle. I like the fact of the dormers bringing light into the sort of little mezzanine levels. So there was a lot to like about it. Overall, it's a really nice project. Really, you can see that people would really have a good time living there.
The first project I'd like to talk about is a Casa Saudade, and I thought that was a great adaptive reuse that met the city's street side barn appearance while using passive solar features, solar roof, and radiant concrete flooring. The rare facade design and interior conversions with lofts really enhanced the original structure.
My name is Lindsay Mitchell, and I'm a registered architect at Myers & Associates in Columbus, Ohio. I also serve as co-chair of the AIA Columbus Committee on Design, and I was grateful to serve on your jury this year. One of the first projects I'd like to talk about is Casa Saudade. We thought this one was a thoughtful transformation from an existing equipment shed. The south-facing window wall and the design of the canopy to take into consideration the passive solar design was well executed. For such a simple plan, the interior volume and spatial arrangements are well done, and there's a great use of materiality.
Surge tent. This unique project was delivered in a design-build method to meet the client's aggressive 5-month schedule. The project's goals were to build a structure with enough capacity to relieve an overcrowded emergency department, allow for a new social distancing in preparation for an anticipated fall COVID surge, and could be rebuilt for any future emergencies. Most important, the patient experience was to be considered as Dwyer assisted in preliminary research and programming. With the threat of winter and the elements, several temporary structures were eliminated that could not provide a sound and clean environment for patient care. LaChase Construction was brought on board to lead the construction of the selected 3,200 square feet sprung structure. Close coordination with the engineering teams helped determine the optimal location of the tent within the existing busy emergency department parking lot. In addition to rethinking and rerouting patient and ambulance traffic, the team had to adjust to accommodate a significant change in grade. A concrete foundation and slab were built to provide a level structure. Handicap accessible ramps between the tent and both emergency department main entrance and EMS entrances were constructed and covered in a canopy system to protect the ramps during inclement weather. The resulting structure includes 28 patient bays, a nurse work area, and support spaces. Keeping in step with the aggressive schedule, the design team researched and selected durable healthcare materials that could be ordered and installed quickly and still maintain infection control guidelines. Pre-finished drywall was specified for a quick assembly, yet appealing and safe finish for the interior walls. The spacious interior features heating and cooling systems, automatic doors, and power and data sources for optimal patient care. From inception to occupancy, this project was completed in 5 months on time and within budget.
You know, I'll give credit to UVAR. They picked out this tent. That was awesome. That was the decision of what was going to be the best way to quickly, I mean, we had 3 big goals of this. 1, provide a safe space for the surge. 2, we need to do it quickly. And 3, it's got to be cost effective.
Right.
So that's how we ended up with a tent in a parking lot.
See,
it's a healthcare space.
So that's so funny because it's like in its simplicity, like as you're saying, it's a tent in a parking lot, and it's like, you know, and look, I'm honestly, it's like I'm looking at the pictures and I'm like, it's a tent in a parking lot, right? And I'm like, architecturally, how do I interpret this, right? And I'm like, well, the form's interesting, the way it's, you know, and then I start thinking about how it's being used, right? So it wasn't that necessarily like we were creating an architecture, we were creating a use for an existing architecture that was never intended for that use in a situation that we don't understand.
Yep.
How were they, I mean, what information were they providing you that you guys could kind of outfit this?
Well, we do healthcare architecture every day, not in a tent, but
sure,
it was applying a lot of the same rules. You know, we need as many spaces as, you know, as many patient bays as we can get. And it went back and forth a lot on size. You know, I think just making it look like the hospital on the inside, and, you know, we had the same finishes and the same colors, and it was meant to feel kind of seamless, even though you had to go from one building to the tent. It's meant to make it feel like you're in the ED. And I guess it was a pivotal point in this project was when it was decided to become a design build delivery, because that brought our team together quickly, and it made it, LaChase came on board, ME Engineering on board with us, and Pastoral Associates were on board with us.
You know, out of something was so trying and so horrible, you know, for the group to come together and produce something that was so successful, it doesn't happen all that often, maybe once in a lifetime kind of thing.
Everyone's egos had to go to the side. There was a mission and we had a short time period to do it. And you know, this was important for our community right here in Rochester. Right. This was a local thing that had to happen. So, right. And the cool thing about this tent, you can take it down and pack it up and move it. And I know that's a very simplistic way of saying it, but part of the sustainability is when they're done here, they can store it.
I mean, that's a huge kudos to you guys. And I know, like, community-wise, I mean, that's just a huge asset, you know, for you guys, your willingness to do that.
That's Dwyer.
Yeah.
But this wouldn't have been possible without them reaching out either. So, yeah, just our whole team. University of Rochester, LaChase, Emmy, Passero, everyone at Dwyer. I mean, it was more than me. There were a lot of people involved. So,
Community Impact Award piece. Dwyer assisted in the preliminary research to determine the validity of purchasing a temporary structure. Conceptual floor plans were developed to assist the University of Rochester in selecting and ordering the appropriately sized structure to alleviate pressures in the emergency department and to better allow for social distancing of patients to meet the immediate and future needs to the care for the greater Rochester area. LaChase was brought on board to lead the design and construction of a 3,200 square foot sprung tent to expedite delivery and construction of the project in a design-build-delivery method. Close coordination with the engineering teams helped determine the optimal location of the tent within the existing emergency department parking lot. Together, this team adapted to the select location that had a significant change in grade. Handicap accessible and weather-protected ramps between the tent, the emergency department, and the ambulance entrance were also designed in construction to prepare for the possibility of a harsh winter. This project's community impact was its ability to create synergy and confidence in a time of uncertainty, not only for the community it serves, but for the professionals that came together to build it. This temporary structure had a very solid, all-hands-on-deck, unselfish foundation. This project began because of one professional feeling helpless, asked, "What can I do to help?" This created a conversation starting with the University of Rochester to include Dwyer Architectural, LaChase Construction, Jensen BRV Engineering, Emmy Engineering, and Passero Associates, who joined forces to make an impact by showing the community we are ready.
The fourth project that I would like to talk about is the surge tent, which we thought was appropriate for its time, and therefore, if it's such a thing exists, we would like to give it an community impact award. I liked it for its simplicity. I liked it for its straightforwardness. I liked it for its ability to solve a problem with the hospital. I liked its understatedness. Overall, the interior organization and the simplicity of the tent itself and the structure of the tent, I thought were noteworthy.
Given the times that we're in, the community impact of the surge tent is absolutely on point. It's a simple and straightforward project. As far as the structure is concerned, you know, I really like how it keeps such an open space and yet is able to bring a little bit of a graceful feel to a space that is serving a very important and immediate need. So we were really excited to be able to celebrate the surge tent as and all the impact that it's brought to the community in these crazy times.
Flex Pods. Rochester has made a name for itself through its year-round festivals, from the well-known Lilac Festival to the recently incepted Fringe Festival. Rochesterians have learned how to maximize the warm seasons out of necessity. Our experience in hosting festivals draws over 100,000 people each festival. Attendees may retire to one of the area's hotels, rentals, or return home. What if you want to stay where the action is? FlexPod services the festival crowds and focuses on two primary goals: flexibility and identity. FlexPods can be adapted into various configurations, not only to address the number of occupants, but also weather, privacy, security, and fun. The FlexPod unit is an easily transportable and lightweight 7-foot cube with a solid utility wall panel on one of the end that includes built-in lighting, roof downspouts, a storage closet, and a Murphy bed. With the bed stored away, the entire FlexPod becomes an open living space. There are limitless ways to combine units, open walls, create shade, block or invite summer winds through the use of privacy shades, glass, solid walls, and more. FlexPods can be deployed in a variety of applications. Not only can they create temporary communities for festivals, but they can also be used in federal emergency situations, as shelter for the homeless and farmers markets. FlexPods are easy to reconfigure, creating various conditions with a single unit. The site diagrams demonstrate how units create clusters with varying experiences. The space created between the FlexPods becomes an even more interesting than the unit itself. The design's focus was not on flashy forms, but about placemaking and enhancing experience. FlexPods also focuses on identity. Each unit has its own unique color and pattern. Identity is especially important while providing shelter for the homeless residents. The colors and patterns enhance the festival aesthetic and aid in wayfinding. Units can also be sponsored and branded by local companies to generate revenue. FlexPods conveniently fit on a standard parking space, easily conforming to an open lot. Once unloaded, let the end users customize their experience. The configurations are endless.
How does it evolve into the FlexPods? Like, what's that like kind of aha moment where it was like, okay, you know, we're throwing around some ideas, the sketches are flying around, we're having conversations. When does it hit this concept?
The first couple meetings, it seemed like the ideas either were for a quote unquote kit of parts, which is kind of this, or ideas that could transform so the occupant could slide out a door that now becomes a divider for a patio, or they could lift open door. And we decided to just stick to something simple that we could use both concepts.
Okay.
And focus on the kit of parts, the occupant being able to transform the space to whatever they wanted it to be, and give opportunity for branding, which is where Chris comes into play.
As a whole. So we tried to keep that in mind as we were developing the pieces that would come together, how all of the individual units could work and how the environment it would create.
How it starts in one spot and kind of evolves into the sustainability of being able to reuse something. You know, so it's not a one-time structure, it's kind of the reuse of something. I think the other thing that kind of grasped me was the colors. Like, that kind of caught me right away, right? And I think this image kind of sold it to me.
One of the things we thought and immediately had as an idea and concept was part of the program requirements, we're thinking about this in an emergency homeless shelter situation. And so one of the big aspects of that is having identity. So that was where I think that came from, where the bright colors came from, was the idea that, you know, someone that is in a situation like that could have something that would give them identity. I am the orange, you know, fruit container on the corner over here, or I'm the green container that has the mountains and the trees on it, you know, and that all tied into the branding. But I think that was probably the original idea, was we want these to have, you know, an identifier, and we thought colors and the kind of logo / branding would be the best way to do that.
We had that idea early on,
And then once we kind of narrowed it down and decided that we did want a simpler modular structure, we saw almost like an opportunity to use colors and branding and even further advertising or whatever that goes to. But definitely the simpler structure helped us with that too.
Once again, it's a simple, elegant concept. And I think that's one of the things that I was drawn to, is that, but in my head, it's like, I don't think I was really thinking so much about all the negative surrounding space and how that it almost creates a micro community within the community, right?
The winner of the 2021 People's Choice Award is the RIT Global Security Institute by Labella Associates. Congratulations to the project team at Labella. Through the fusion of technology, business, and design, the new Cybersecurity Institute will lead the charge in the education and research in the cybersecurity field. Situated in the center of campus, this building transforms a campus void into a gateway into the world of cybersecurity. At 3 stories and over 50,000 square feet, the Institute is home to classrooms, instructional and research labs, simulation and training rooms, collaboration and community spaces, and faculty offices. This facility will have a major role in hosting special events while showcasing the Institute's research and technology. Situated at the core of the facility is the Cybersecurity Range, or CSR, a space which seamlessly blurs the line between education and reality. The CSR provides its students with a realistic stage for collaboration and problem solving in a high-pressure environment. Featuring custom displays, millwork, AV theatrics, and unlimited virtual connectivity, the simulated learning environment creates a dynamic atmosphere which can be altered to intensify a scripted exercise. The design party challenges preconceptions of cybersecurity as a mysterious profession of hackers and secretive government agencies. The dark exterior envelope embraces the stereotype, which is contrasted with the transparent south facade and bright interior color palette designed to invite curiosity. As a recurring theme, binary coding can be found throughout the design in both the literal and figurative usage, which can be discovered by inquisitive occupants. A binary pattern translating to campus appears on glazing surfaces, scaled and arranged to optimize sun shading and privacy. Lighting fixtures in each of the 3 main corridors are arranged in 8-digit sequences, spelling out 1 letter per floor as you move up through the building. Similarly, the signage at the entrance translates into an inspirational quote, framing the industry experience they seek to gain.
AIA Rochester is excited to donate all of the proceeds from the People's Choice Award to the Open Door mission and thank them for their service and dedication to our community.
The overall view is that I very much appreciate the diversity of the projects, that we're here to celebrate architecture. It was really nice to see the projects. Clearly, there's a lot going on in Rochester, and we applaud your efforts in that area. Thank you.
Overall, I thought the submissions were really diverse and had a lot of interesting, size, scale, and really enjoyed the process of judging this.
I was happy to be able to jury the full slate of submissions for the AIA Rochester Awards. It is clear from all of the submissions that there's a real commitment to the community, and so many of these projects were identifying how they're giving back and working to transform and bring change to spaces, reusing existing structures and revitalizing spaces that have kind of fallen into disrepair or have just kind of like gone unnoticed over time. So I really enjoyed going through all of the projects and seeing how much work and how much creative energy your teams are putting into the design for your communities. So thank you.
AIA Rochester would like to thank this year's jury, AIA Columbus chapter. The team pulled together with the efforts of Elizabeth Krill, Executive Director, was a wonderful team of individuals to have to be part of this year's AIA Rochester Design Awards. Their willingness to donate their time and expertise to jury the projects is greatly appreciated.
AIA Rochester is pleased to announce the 2021 scholarship recipients. The following have received AIA Rochester scholarships. Ali Al-Saidi, attending RIT. Jack Serrani, attending Penn State. Cecilia Ebersold, attending University of Buffalo. Rebecca Gregg, attending Rensselaer. Hannah Lake, attending Morrisville State. Ting Lee, attending RIT. Paris Nandu, attending RIT. Makendra Nobes, attending Kent State. Receiving the Bergman Scholarship is Colin Thompson, attending Alfred State. Special thanks is given to the following for their contribution to this year's scholarships. AIA Rochester, the Architectural Foundation of Greater Rochester, AIA National, Bergman, the family of Myron Starks, Women in Architecture.
A special thank you goes out to the following gold sponsors this year. At this time, we would like to take this opportunity to thank our bronze sponsors. A special thanks goes out to Gong Glass Works, Nancy Gong, glass artist, for supplying all of this year's AIA Rochester Design Awards. There, you gotta start it. As this concludes the 2021 AIA Rochester Design Awards, we would first like to again thank all of our sponsors this year. It is wonderful to have so many of you be part of this year's awards, and without your support, this presentation would not be possible. So thank you again. I would also like to thank everyone that voted for the People's Choice Awards this year. With your help, and in conjunction with the AIA Rochester, we were able to donate $750 to the Open Door Mission. I would also like to thank the Design Awards Committee, the group of individuals standing here with me tonight, donate their time and talents to make this all happen. They are the major reason we are able to pull together the Design Awards this year, and for me, to each of them, thank you to each of you for everything that you have done. Sorry. Lastly, and maybe most important, the local and regional architectural firms that produce the wonderful projects year in and year out. It is because of each of you that we have the awards, and we are grateful for your willingness to submit projects to the AIA Rochester Design Awards and share them with everyone. With that, good night, and we look forward to seeing you all in person for the 2022 AIA Rochester Design Awards. Thanks again.